Let's start with the astonishing front page splash from Michael Warner in today's Herald Sun, detailing the bombshell claims from a review of the Daniel and Catherine Andrews car crash, which has concluded that Victoria Police engaged in an overt cover-up to avoid implicating a political figure in a life-threatening incident. This explosive 36-page assessment by a former police assistant commissioner asserts that the Andrews family SUV was travelling at speed and on the wrong side of the road when it struck teenage cyclist Ryan Meuleman in Blairgowrie back in January 7, 2013. Now, we have heard differing accounts of what happened from those who were there. Dan and Catherine Andrews insisted that they came to a complete stop and turned right from a stationary position just moments before being T-boned by the cyclist. T-boned is the expression that was used, but the pictures of the car showed something entirely different. And now the expert review conducted by the state's former Assistant Commissioner for Traffic and Operations, Dr. Ryan Meuleman, it's concluded the police investigation which supported the Andrews version of events was deeply flawed, unfounded, and contrary to the available evidence. Dr. Shuey writes, the version as provided by Catherine and Daniel Andrews is considered improbable and implausible. The propagation of a lie and striking deception, the report claims, began when the driver's name was recorded as Catherine Louise Kessick, which is Mrs. Andrews' maiden name, in a traffic incident system report submitted by police in the hours after the crash. And we'll have more on the police breaches a little later. Now, Dr. Shuey's review was commissioned by Mr. Meuleman's lawyers as part of an ongoing Supreme Court damages proceedings into the crash. I spoke to Ryan's father, Peter Meuleman, back in June, and he was clear that the family will not stop seeking justice for Ryan.
We're hoping to get justice for Ryan from this. It's just been such a long road for us, so we'd really like to get closure on the case. If you've got nothing to hide, you'd be transparent about all of those records. We just want that clarity and that closure and that justice.
Joining me now is Sky News senior reporter Caroline Marcus. Caroline, this is an explosive story. Michael Warner has been doggedly pursuing it while the bulk of the Victorian media looks the other way. The revelations, the claims here are deeply worrying. What do you make of what you've read today?
Well, it has been extraordinary, Rita, because this review has been unequivocally scathing of Victoria Police in its handling of this crash. I mean, the review found that there were more than a dozen breaches of standard police operating procedure, and that included some of the basic things that you'd expect to happen at a crime scene like this. Well, we didn't know if it was a crime scene or what had happened, but it's treated like a crime scene at the beginning when police turn up to a traffic accident like this. There was no breath test taken of either Daniel Andrews or Catherine Andrews. The crime scene was never cordoned off. They didn't door knock neighbouring residents. They allowed Mr. Andrews to drive off in the vehicle despite it being unroadworthy and being a critical piece of evidence to the entire scene, clearly. And more than that, they proceeded to, it seems, lie in their initial police report that they submitted. So you saw an example of how they used Catherine Andrews' maiden name. They also claimed that they had performed a breath test, only to later admit that they hadn't done that because police said that Mrs. Andrews didn't seem to stink of alcohol, so they didn't feel that they needed to. I mean, it was quite remarkable. And not only, of course, did Victoria Police come off very badly out of this review, I mean, it accuses them of a huge cover-up because the then opposition leader was involved. But Daniel Andrews and his wife don't come off well either, of course, because their version of events is found to have been improbable and implausible. And in fact, Dr. Shuey leaves it open as to whether Mr. Andrews was actually driving the vehicle himself, which of course he has always denied. But police never even asked Mrs. Andrews why she would have been driving his car at the time. They didn't check the position of the driver's seat, and a witness who spoke to them at the scene told them she saw Mrs. Andrews sitting in the passenger seat after the crash. So there are still lots of questions that remain after this review has been handed down, but I think it is time for the former Premier to answer questions to this family who, to their credit, have not been dissuaded by the fact that they're up against a very powerful political family, but have continued to fight for justice.
Yes, and the review, you highlighted some of the police breaches there, the failure to conduct breath tests, and as you said, claiming that they had done it when they hadn't. And it also found that they did not follow procedure in so many different respects. For example, they didn't call in the highway patrol officers or the major collision unit, which is required by policy. That's what you would expect them to do. And the police conduct, there are also concerns about an officer from the Rye police station jumping the call, taking charge of the car crash scene 2 minutes after it had been allocated to another unit that was closer to the accident site. The review details how this senior constable stated that she was closer to the Blairgowrie street where the teenager cyclist was struck, but she was actually at Rye Police Station doing urgent correspondence and then took 6.5 minutes to leave to go to the site. Dr. Raymond Shuey found this raises critical questions as to why the senior constable, whose name is redacted, wanted to take over the call and cancel a unit already en route. What external communications via telephone or radio with the senior constable occurred in the time from the crash to being en route? Caroline, I'm not suggesting there was any wrongdoing by the Andrews here, but for the sake of transparency, should there be immunity offered to any police officers involved in a deliberate cover-up if one indeed did take place?
Well, look, in my opinion, no. I mean, they appear on the findings of this review to have failed in their very basic duty of care to members of the public and their duties to investigate a crime properly and fully. You know, the crime scene was not cordoned off, as I mentioned before, and the case was closed by about 6 p.m. the same day of the crash. And that's despite all these questions hanging over it. I mean, in what case does that tend to happen? These people need to be properly questioned over how this happened. And it isn't just the police officers who were at the scene. It is the people who were overseeing their work as well, who did come under criticism in this review too, because there were other facets to this, Rita. The family was never provided a report with who the other driver was in order to protect the Andrews family. And that is a very basic duty that police have. How did that not happen? How did the superiors of those officers overlooking it take place?
There have been so many breaches. We've detailed just some of them. We could spend hours on things that were done that shouldn't have been done. It is bewildering. And it's worrying. Before you go, something a little bit lighter. A gender row has erupted at 13th Beach Golf Links on Victoria's Bellarine Peninsula after a man decided to dress as a woman to protest the club's discounted rates for female members. Maybe he just wanted to get a discount. Here he is, or should that be here she is?
Perry, is it?
Yes, I'm identifying as a female now.
and I'm just about to inquire about the new membership deal.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the stunt has backfired. He's been suspended, and so has the dude videoing the whole thing. I think that's a little bit harsh. I think they're just making a point there and doing it in an amusing manner, Caro.
And don't we live in a time, Rita, where if you identify as a woman, you are a woman? I thought that's the whole point. Clearly, they've misgendered him by refusing to accept that in a wig and a skirt, he's now a woman. No, but obviously, this was a prank that he wanted to show up the discrimination, I guess, that exists in this club because women are being charged a discounted fee for memberships compared to men. And the club's saying it's doing it to address historical misrepresentation and that they have to take a stand, Golf Australia says, because what this prank did was to have a laugh at basically the inclusion. I don't know how it does that. In fact, it's having a go at exclusion because men are excluded from this discounted rate. Look, if I was a female golfer, I probably wouldn't complain, but therein lies all the hypocrisy of this.
Caroline Marcus, thanks for your time this evening.